The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and old money, a perfect backdrop for my sister Diana's wedding to Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. I adjusted my understated gray silk dress, beautifully cut but deliberately simple, and made my way through the pre-ceremony crowd. "Oh darling, you came." My mother's voice carried that particular tone reserved for disappointments. She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her perfect makeup. "Though couldn't you have made more of an effort? It's your sister's big day." I touched the delicate fabric of my dress, custom-made in Milan last week. I thought this was appropriate. Appropriate for a business meeting maybe. Diana appeared in a cloud of white tulle and diamonds, her wedding dress probably costing more than most people's homes. Couldn't afford a proper outfit? I told Mom we should have helped you with the expenses. The irony made me smile. While they'd been planning this wedding for a year, I'd been building an aviation empire in secret. My fleet of luxury helicopters and private jets served executives across 3 continents, though my family still thought I was struggling with a small charter business. "Speaking of expenses," my mother lowered her voice, "your father mentioned you borrowed against your condo again. Darling, if you're in trouble..." "I'm fine, Mom." I checked my phone as another message came through. My London office needed urgent approval for a $50 million acquisition. "Fine." Diana scoffed, adjusting her tiara. "Is that why you're wearing last season's dress to my wedding? Even my bridesmaids are in Valentino." I glanced at the lineup of identical pink dresses, each bridesmaid a perfect example of what my family considered success. Married to bankers, lawyers, or trust fund managers. "At least she's not wearing that awful pantsuit from Cousin Emma's wedding," my Aunt Margaret chimed in, swirling her champagne. "Though I suppose when you're running a, what do you call it? Air taxi service." "Something like that," I replied, checking my watch. The board meeting would start soon whether I was ready or not. "You could have had a real career," Diana sighed, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Daddy offered you a position at his firm. Instead you're playing with toy planes." My phone buzzed again. The acquisition deal was heating up and my presence was required. I'd planned this, of course, the timing, the entrance, everything. "I really should take this call," I said, stepping away from the group. "During my wedding?" Diana's voice rose. "This is exactly why you're still single. No sense of family priorities." I walked toward the hotel's grand entrance, speaking clearly into my phone. "Yes, proceed with Operation Bridal Suite." "Operation what?" My mother called after me, but the distant sound of helicopter rotors drowned out her voice. The wedding guests rushed to the windows as 3 sleek black helicopters appeared, each bearing my company's distinctive gold logo. They descended onto the plaza's helipad in perfect formation. "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded, his face reddening. "Who authorized?" "Sorry, emergency board meeting," I smiled, straightening my cheap dress. "Don't worry about the wedding gift, Diana. It's in the second helicopter. Just a little something I picked up. The resort in Maldives you couldn't book for your honeymoon. I bought it last week." The silence that fell over the ballroom was worth every second of their previous condescension. Then my sister's perfect makeup cracked as she realized what I'd just said. You bought the resort?" "The entire chain, actually." I headed for the door as my pilot approached with a portfolio requiring signatures. "Oh, and Mom? About that condo loan. I own the building now. All 30 floors of it." The rotors continued their rhythmic beat as my family struggled to process this revelation. But they hadn't seen anything yet. The real surprise was still to come. "This is ridiculous," Diana's fiancé Preston stepped forward. "You expect us to believe you own Elite Airways? The company that's buying up every luxury aviation service in Europe." I pulled a business card from my clutch, matte black with embossed gold lettering. "Elite Airways? No, they work for me. Skyline Global Holdings is my parent company. Elite is just one of our recent acquisitions." The wedding planner rushed over, panic evident on her face. "Miss Diana, we need to start the ceremony in 10 minutes. "The ceremony can wait," my father interrupted, his banker's instincts finally kicking in. "Alexandra, what exactly is going on here?" I held up one finger as my phone buzzed again. "James, tell the board I'll be there in 5. And make sure the Tokyo team is ready for the satellite call." I ended the call and faced my family. What's going on is that while you were all pitying my struggling charter business, I was building the largest private aviation network in the Northern Hemisphere. But your little office in Queens," my mother stammered, "was a front." I smiled. "Our real headquarters takes up the top 10 floors of the building you're always complaining I can't afford to live in. You know, the one with the perfect view of Central Park." Diana's perfect composure cracked completely. "The Skyline Tower? You work in the Skyline Tower." "I own the Skyline Tower," I corrected her, "along with similar properties in London, Dubai and Singapore. Though I suppose that's just me playing with toy planes again, right, Diana?" The wedding guests were openly staring now, phones out, undoubtedly Googling my name. The society pages would be buzzing within hours. "Miss Alexandra," my pilot called from the doorway. "The board is waiting." "Right." I turned to Diana, whose mascara was starting to run. "Congratulations on your wedding, sis. The resort staff will be expecting you next week. I've arranged for one of my toy planes to fly you there. It's the one with the gold-plated interior you tried to charter last month but couldn't afford." "That was your jet?" Preston's face went pale. "The one with the waiting list longer than the Hermes Birkin? All 15 of them are mine, actually." I checked my watch again. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have to go close a billion-dollar deal." "Oh, and Mom?" I paused at the door. "This business meeting dress? It's a one-of-a-kind piece. The designer made it specifically for the woman who bought controlling interest in his fashion house last spring." The look on their faces as I walked out was priceless. Behind me, I could hear the whispers starting, the rumors spreading, the entire carefully orchestrated wedding descending into chaos as Manhattan's elite realized they'd been snubbing one of the wealthiest women in the city. My heels clicked across the marble floor as I headed for the helipad, where 3 pilots stood at attention. The board meeting would start soon, but I had time for one last glance over my shoulder. Through the grand windows, I could see my sister's perfect wedding imploding in real time. The board meeting was brief but dramatic. By the time I returned to the Plaza Hotel, the wedding reception was in full swing, though not quite in the way Diana had planned. Instead of being the center of attention, my sister sat at the head table, staring at her phone as headlines about Skyline Global's latest acquisition flooded the financial news. $2.1 billion deal, I said, sliding into the seat beside her. "Sorry it took so long. Negotiations with the Europeans always run late." Diana looked up, her perfect makeup now slightly smeared. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what? That while you were mocking my little charter business, I was building an empire. That every time you offered to help me financially, I was closing deals worth more than your fiancé's yearly bonus." Speaking of Preston, he was across the room, huddled with his investment banker colleagues, all of them frantically typing on their phones. No doubt they were trying to figure out how they'd missed such a massive player in their precious financial world. "Your sister's right." My mother appeared, sliding into a chair. Her earlier condescension had been replaced by something that looked almost like awe. "We're family. We should have known." "Really?" I pulled out my phone, bringing up a photo gallery. "Like when I tried to tell you about my first major contract 3 years ago, and you interrupted to show Diana's engagement ring to the entire dinner party?" I swiped through the photos. My company's global headquarters, the fleet of luxury aircraft, the properties around the world. Or when I mentioned buying my first helicopter company, and Aunt Margaret suggested I focus on finding a husband instead? "We didn't understand," my mother began. "No," I cut her off, "you didn't want to understand. It didn't fit your narrative of success. In your world, I was the failure who couldn't even dress properly for a wedding." The irony hung heavy in the air as another group of guests walked past, openly staring at me now. My simple gray dress had suddenly become the most talked-about outfit at the reception. "But now we know," Diana said quietly. "And we're proud." "Are you?" I smiled. "Are you proud now that you know I'm rich? Or are you just embarrassed that you spent years pitying me in public?" Before she could answer, Preston appeared at our table, his face flushed with either champagne or anxiety. "Alexandra, I was wondering if we could discuss some potential business opportunities." "My office takes meetings by appointment only," I replied coolly. "Though I should warn you, we just bought your firm's aviation division. You might want to check your inbox." His face went pale. "What?" "The deal closed during my emergency board meeting." Your CO signed the papers an hour ago. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Consider it part of your wedding gift. Starting Monday, you'll be working for me. The band chose that moment to start playing, but few people were dancing. Instead, the ballroom had turned into an impromptu networking event, with every guest trying to catch my eye or edge closer to our table. My father approached, looking more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. Alexandra, about that position at my firm. You mean the junior analyst role you offered me last Christmas? I checked my phone again. I'm afraid I'm a bit overqualified now, but I might have an opening for you. An opening? Skyline Global is expanding into private wealth management. We could use someone with traditional banking experience. I paused. Of course, you'd have to interview like anyone else. The mighty Richard Harrison, who'd never worked for anyone but himself, actually seemed to be considering it. I'd be interested. Excellent. My HR team will contact you. I turned back to Diana, whose perfect wedding day had turned into something entirely unexpected. Now about that honeymoon resort. You really bought it? She whispered. The entire chain. 18 properties across 12 countries. I pulled out an envelope. Your suite is confirmed for next week. I'm sending my personal jet, the one with the bathroom bigger than your first apartment. The whispers around us grew louder as more wedding guests realized who they were really sharing the room with. My mother's society friends were practically tripping over themselves to catch my attention, their earlier disdain magically transformed into desperate admiration. But the real power play was just beginning. I stood up, straightening my designer dress as my phone buzzed with another notification. If you'll excuse me, I smiled. I have another meeting. Someone's trying to buy the Plaza Hotel. I paused for effect. I should probably tell them it's no longer for sale. Why not? Diana asked, though I think she already knew the answer. Because as of this morning, I own it. I turned to leave, then looked back one last time. Consider it my real wedding gift. After all, what's better than getting married at the Plaza? Owning it. 1 month after Diana's wedding, I sat in my penthouse office atop the Skyline Tower, watching the sunset paint Manhattan's skyline in shades of gold. The view of Central Park stretched out below, a green oasis in the concrete jungle where I'd built my empire. My assistant knocked softly. Your family is here for the dinner meeting. I smiled, remembering how these monthly family dinners used to be held at my parents' house, where they'd spend hours questioning my life choices. Now they came to me. Send them in. They entered with a different air now. Gone was the condescension, replaced by a mixture of respect and lingering amazement. Diana and Preston had just returned from their honeymoon at my resort, sporting fresh tans and humbled attitudes. Alexandra, my father nodded, taking in the spectacular office with its wall of screens displaying Skyline Global's worldwide operations. The Tokyo acquisition closed today, I said, gesturing to the leather seats around my conference table. And Preston, your transition team has the reports I requested? My brother-in-law straightened his tie. Yes, the aviation division's numbers are exceeding projections under the new structure. Good. I turned to Diana, who was studying me with new eyes. And how was the resort? Amazing, she admitted. The staff told us how you transformed the entire chain in less than a year. The sustainability initiatives, the local community programs. Business isn't just about profit, I replied, pressing a button that dimmed the windows and activated the presentation screens. It's about impact. My mother leaned forward. Darling, about the Plaza Hotel. The renovation plans are approved. We're turning the East Wing into a technology innovation center. Free coding classes for underprivileged girls. I smiled. Remember when you said I was wasting my time teaching computer skills at the community center? She had the grace to look embarrassed. We were wrong about so many things. You were, I agreed, pulling up the latest company statistics. But now you have a choice. You can either remain stuck in your old worldview, or you can join me in building something meaningful. What do you mean? My father asked. I distributed tablets around the table. Skyline Global is launching a charitable foundation. Education, technology access, entrepreneurship support. I'm offering you all positions on the board. Us. Diana looked surprised. But we don't know anything about. You'll learn, I interrupted. Like I did. No special treatment, no shortcuts. You'll work with our teams, understand our mission, earn your places. Preston scrolled through the proposal. These numbers. The foundation's budget is larger than my former firm's annual revenue. Money is only valuable when it creates change, I said, standing to face the city lights. Remember all those society events where you showcased your wealth? Let's showcase what wealth can do instead. My mother dabbed at her eyes. You've become extraordinary. I always was, Mom. You just couldn't see it through your designer glasses. The next hour was spent reviewing plans, assigning responsibilities, setting expectations. My family learned more about business strategy in that meeting than in all their years of cocktail party networking. As the evening wound down, Diana lingered behind the others. That dress, she said quietly. The one you wore to my wedding. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you? Sometimes the best statement is understated, I replied. Besides, the headlines wrote themselves. Billionaire crashes society wedding in simple gray dress. She laughed, then grew serious. I'm sorry. For everything. I know. I touched her arm. Now prove it by doing something worthwhile with this opportunity. After they left, I stood at my window watching the city lights twinkle. My phone buzzed. Photos from the resort Diana had just visited. Local girls learning to code in the new computer lab I'd built there, their faces bright with possibility. Success wasn't about proving my family wrong anymore. It was about showing them a different way to be right. My assistant appeared with the next day's schedule. The Young Entrepreneurs Mentoring Program starts at 9 a.m. Perfect. I smiled, thinking of all the other failures out there, building their own empires in silence. Oh, and send a memo to the plaza staff. The next time someone shows up in a simple gray dress, don't assume anything.
The human body is remarkable at healing itself, but some scars run deeper than skin. I learned this the hard way 3 years ago when a drunk driver changed my life forever and showed me exactly who my family really was. I'm Alexandra, Alex, Chen, former marathon runner, physical therapist, and black sheep of my family. That last part wasn't always true. In fact, until the accident, I was the responsible one. The steady, reliable daughter who put herself through medical school, built a successful practice, and always showed up for family events with the perfect gift and a ready smile. My younger sister Melissa was the family star, the creative one with her art gallery and bohemian lifestyle. Our parents adored her free spirit, always excusing her flakiness and financial instability as part of her artistic temperament. When she needed money, which was often, they'd write a check without hesitation. When I suggested she might benefit from a business course or financial planning, I was accused of being unsupportive and jealous of her talent. But I didn't mind, not really. I loved my sister, quirks and all. We had different strengths, different paths. I found joy in helping my patients recover their mobility, in seeing them take their first steps after injury or surgery. My life was orderly, purposeful, and exactly how I wanted it. Until that rainy Tuesday in October. I was driving home from a late patient session, already looking forward to a hot shower and the leftovers waiting in my fridge. The roads were slick with rain, but I was being careful. The same couldn't be said for the pickup truck that ran the red light at 60 miles per hour. They say your life flashes before your eyes in moments like that. They're wrong. There was no flash, no montage of memories. Just the blinding glare of headlights, the screech of brakes, and then darkness. I woke up 3 days later in the ICU. The list of injuries was extensive. Compound fracture of the right femur, shattered pelvis, multiple broken ribs, internal bleeding, and severe nerve damage in my right leg. The drunk driver had walked away with barely a scratch. You're lucky to be alive, the trauma surgeon told me. What he didn't say, but what I could read in his careful expression, was that I was lucky to still have my leg. The next few months would test the limits of that luck. My parents flew in from California when they got the news. Mom cried, Dad paced, and Melissa posted artsy black and white photos of the hospital corridor on Instagram with captions about life's fragility. For the first week, they were there constantly, hovering over my bed, asking the doctors endless questions. Then reality set in. We can't stay much longer, Mom said one morning, not quite meeting my highs. Your father has that big project at work, and Melissa's gallery opening is next month. I understood. Really, I did. They had lives to get back to. What I didn't understand was what came next. The insurance company started giving me trouble. The drunk driver was uninsured, and while my own insurance covered part of the medical costs, the mounting bills were staggering. Multiple surgeries, specialized equipment, physical therapy, it all added up quickly. "Mom," I said during one of our increasingly rare phone calls, "I hate to ask, but could you and Dad help with some of the medical bills? Just until I can work again. The insurance is denying some of the claims," and there was a long pause on the line. "Oh, sweetie," she sighed, "we'd love to help, but we just can't right now. We're still paying off the loan for Melissa's gallery renovation. You understand, don't you? You're so good with money. I'm sure you have savings." I did have savings. I had a healthy emergency fund and a good investment portfolio. But the costs were astronomical, and I was looking at months, maybe years, of rehabilitation before I could work at full capacity again. "What about a loan?" I suggested. "I'll pay you back everything once I'm working again." "Alex," Mom's voice took on that patronizing tone I knew too well, "you need to be realistic. Your leg, well, the doctor said you might never fully recover. Maybe this is a sign that you should consider a different career path, something less physical." I hung up shortly after that, fighting back tears of frustration. They'd helped Melissa chase her dreams countless times, bailing her out of failed ventures and funding new ones. But when I needed them, truly needed them for the first time in my life, they couldn't spare the money. The next few months were the hardest of my life. Physical therapy was excruciating, and I knew better than most what a long road I had ahead. I had to sell my car, then my condo, moving into a small rental apartment closer to the rehabilitation center. My savings dwindled rapidly. Melissa called occasionally, always with drama of her own. "The gallery's struggling," she'd complain. "Mom and Dad are helping, but it's so stressful. I can barely sleep. Oh, how's your leg? Are you walking yet?" I wanted to scream. Wanted to ask her if she knew how it felt to lie awake at night, not from artistic anxiety, but from actual physical pain. Instead, I'd murmur something supportive and end the call. My colleagues from the physical therapy practice were amazing, covering my patients and even organizing a fundraiser. But a small private practice can only stretch so far, and eventually, they had to hire someone to replace me. I understood. They had a business to run. Still, watching my career slip away while I struggled to relearn basic movements was soul-crushing. The one bright spot was Jake, my physical therapist. He was tough but compassionate, pushing me to work harder while understanding exactly when I needed to rest. He'd been through something similar himself years ago, a rock climbing accident that nearly ended his career. "The body can heal," he'd tell me during particularly difficult sessions, "but you have to be patient with it, and with yourself." Slowly, painfully, I began to improve. The first time I walked across the room without crutches, Jake actually cheered. It wasn't pretty, my gait was uneven, and I couldn't put full weight on my right leg, but it was progress. My family's calls became less frequent. Mom would make vague promises about visiting, then find excuses not to. Dad sent generic get-well cards with no personal message. Melissa was too busy with her gallery to call at all. I learned to be self-sufficient in new ways. I figured out how to navigate my apartment with minimal pain, how to modify everyday tasks to accommodate my limitations. I started doing consultation work online, using my medical knowledge to help other physical therapists with complex cases. The pay wasn't great, but it was something. The medical bills kept coming. By the time I was walking with just a cane, I was $300,000 in debt. My once perfect credit score was in shambles. I had to make hard choices about which bills to pay, which treatments to postpone. Then, exactly 3 years after my accident, my phone lit up with Mom's number. I almost didn't answer. Our last conversation, 6 months ago, had ended with her suggesting I try positive thinking to heal my leg faster. But something made me pick up. "Alex?" Mom's voice was strange, thick with tears. "Honey, we need you. It's Melissa. She's sick, really sick." I sat down slowly in my worn armchair, the same one I'd spent countless hours in during my recovery. My hand tightened on my cane. "What do you mean, sick?" "Her kidneys are failing," Mom choked out. "Both of them. She needs a transplant, and you're the only match in the family." The silence stretched between us on the phone, filled with 3 years of unspoken hurt and resentment. My mother's breathing was ragged, expectant, waiting for the immediate yes she'd always gotten from me in the past. "I'll need to think about it," I said finally. "Think about it?" Mom's voice rose sharply. This is your sister's life we're talking about. What is there to think about? Everything I wanted to say. Every unanswered call during my darkest days. Every dismissed request for help. Every time you chose her over me. Instead, I simply said, I'll come to California. We can discuss it in person. The flight to San Francisco was uncomfortable. Airplane seats aren't designed for people with mobility issues, and my leg ached fiercely by the time we landed. No one offered to pick me up from the airport. They were all at the hospital with Melissa, of course. I took a taxi to the hospital, my cane tapping against polished floors as I made my way to the kidney unit. The sound echoed in the corridor, announcing my arrival before I reached Melissa's room. My sister looked small in the hospital bed, her usual vibrant energy dimmed by illness. Mom and Dad hovered nearby, both looking older than I remembered. Their faces lit up when they saw me, not with joy at seeing their eldest daughter after 3 years, but with hope for their youngest. Alex, Melissa tried to sit up, tubes and wires shifting around her. You came. Of course I came. I stayed in the doorway, taking in the scene. The room was filled with flowers, cards, and artwork from her gallery friends. A Get Well Soon banner stretched across one wall, hand-painted in cheerful colors. Mom stepped forward, arms outstretched, but stopped when she saw my expression. The doctors want to run some tests, she said instead. To confirm the match. They can do it today if you're ready. Before any tests, I said, pulling a thick folder from my bag, we need to talk. I sat down in the visitor's chair, my leg grateful for the rest. The folder was heavy with medical bills, insurance denials, and bank statements, a paper trail of my own medical nightmare. What's that? Dad asked, frowning. This, I said, opening the folder, is $300,000 in medical debt. My medical debt, from when I needed my family's help and no one was there. The room went very quiet. Melissa's heart monitor beeped steadily in the background. That was different, Mom started, but I cut her off. Different how? Because it was me. Because I was supposed to be the strong one, the responsible one, the one who never needed help. My voice was calm, controlled. I'd rehearsed this speech countless times in my head. But this is life or death. Dad protested. So was my accident, I replied. Did you know I almost lost my leg? That I had to sell everything I owned to pay for surgeries? That I spent months learning to walk again, alone, while you were busy funding Melissa's latest gallery renovation? Melissa started crying softly. Mom looked stricken. Dad just stared at the floor. I'm not here to punish anyone. I continued, my voice softening. I'm here because despite everything, Melissa is my sister and I love her. But before we discuss organ donation, we need to address the past 3 years. What followed was the longest, most honest conversation our family had ever had. Years of favoritism, resentment, and unspoken hurt poured out. Mom cried when I described selling my condo, my voice breaking as I talked about packing up my life one-handed, while still learning to manage crutches. Why didn't you tell us how bad it was? She whispered. I did, I said simply. You didn't want to hear it. The truth hung heavy in the air between us. Dad, an accountant who'd always prided himself on financial responsibility, looked physically ill as he reviewed my medical bills. We didn't know, he stammered. You didn't want to know, I corrected gently. Just like you didn't want to know about Melissa's gallery losing money or her credit card debt. You wanted to believe everything was fine, so you ignored what didn't fit that story. Melissa reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold. I'm so sorry, Alex. I was selfish, wrapped up in my own problems. When Mom and Dad said you were doing fine, I'm sorry too, I squeezed her hand. I should have pushed harder, made you all understand. Instead, I retreated. We all played our parts in this. Jake, my physical therapist, had helped me understand this during our sessions. How families fall into patterns, playing assigned roles until crisis forces them to change or break apart. The next few hours were intense. Dad made calls to his financial advisor, looking into options for helping with my medical debt. Mom alternated between tears and detailed questions about my recovery, really listening this time. Finally, I turned to Melissa. I'll get tested, I said. If I'm a match, I'll donate my kidney. The relief in the room was palpable, but I held up my hand. With conditions. First, Mom and Dad take over my medical debt. All of it. I know they can afford it, and it's no more than they've given you over the years, Melissa. Dad nodded immediately. Mom was already pulling out her phone, probably to call their bank. Second, I continued, we all get counseling, family therapy, no more sweeping things under the rug. Anything else? Melissa asked, trying to smile through her tears. Yes, I said. After the surgery, you're coming to stay with me during recovery. Both of us will need help, and it's time we learn to be real sisters again. The testing confirmed I was a match. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. In the days between, my parents paid off my medical debt entirely. The relief of being free from that burden was overwhelming. The transplant surgery went smoothly. Waking up minus a kidney was strange, but watching color return to Melissa's cheeks made it worthwhile. True to her word, she moved in with me during our recovery. Those weeks of shared healing changed us both. Between bouts of pain and medication schedules, we talked, really talked, about art and medicine, about our parents, about the people we become and the sisters we wanted to be. Our parents visited regularly, finally seeing my small apartment, my modified furniture, the daily reality of my ongoing recovery. Mom cried when she saw the grab bars in my shower, installed after I'd fallen once too often. Dad quietly arranged for better medical coverage for both his daughters. A year has passed since the transplant. My physical therapy practice is reopening with modifications. I can't handle the same patient load I used to, but my experience has made me a better therapist. I understand the mental challenges of recovery in a way textbooks can't teach. Melissa's gallery now includes a section for artists with disabilities. She says I inspired her, but I think she finally opened her eyes to a world beyond her own experience. She's taking business classes too. Turns out she has a knack for finance when she actually tries. My leg will never be what it was. I still walk with a slight limp, and some days are harder than others, but other things have healed better than I could have hoped. Last week, we had a family dinner at my new house, bought with help from my parents as a belated makeup for 3 years of absence. Mom brought her famous lasagna. Dad argued good-naturedly about investment strategies, and Melissa showed us sketches for her new exhibition. Looking around the table, I thought about how organs aren't the only things that can be transplanted. Sometimes family relationships need to be removed, examined, and carefully replaced with something healthier. Jake stopped by for dessert. He's more than my physical therapist now. But that's a different story. Watching him chat with my family, seeing the easy acceptance where there used to be judgment, I realized something important. Sometimes it takes a crisis to break down walls we didn't even know we'd built. Sometimes healing comes in unexpected ways. And sometimes giving a piece of yourself away can make you more whole than you've ever been. The scars on my leg remind me of what I lost in that accident. The scar on my abdomen reminds me of what I gained by forgiving. Both tell the story of how our family finally learned that true strength isn't about never needing help. It's about being brave enough to ask for it, and wise enough to give it when asked. Melissa's kidney functions perfectly now, but more importantly, so does our family. The city lights blurred through my tears as I stared out from the 47th floor of Turner Technologies. My laptop was still open on my desk, displaying the devastating email that had just destroyed 5 years of hard work. Due to recent performance issues and security concerns, Rebecca Chen is hereby removed as lead developer of Project Nexus, effective immediately. I'm Rebecca Chen, 29, and until 10 minutes ago, I was leading the most innovative cybersecurity project in Turner Technologies history. Now I was watching my career implode because of security concerns that made absolutely no sense. You should go home, Rebecca. Marcus Turner's voice came from behind me. My boss, no, my former boss, stood in my office doorway, his perfectly tailored suit and carefully styled gray hair a stark contrast to my disheveled appearance. It will pack up your things. Standard procedure for security risks. The smirk in his voice made my hands curl into fists. We both know I'm not a security risk, Marcus. What's really going on? He stepped into my office, closing the door. The artificial sympathy on his face made my skin crawl. The evidence speaks for itself. Multiple security breaches traced to your access codes. Classified project details leaked to competitors. The board had no choice. That's impossible, I protested. I wrote half the security protocols myself. I would never. And yet, he interrupted smoothly, here we are. It's unfortunate, really. Such a promising career. He shook his head with mock sadness. At least you'll have more time with your father now. How is his treatment going? The casual mention of my dad's cancer made my blood run cold. Marcus knew I'd taken this project partly because the higher salary would help with Dad's mounting medical bills. He'd even seemed supportive at first, fast-tracking my promotion to project lead 8 months ago. Now I wondered if he planned this all along. You know what's really unfortunate, Marcus? I kept my voice steady as I gathered my personal items. How the project started having problems right after you lost the promotion to CTO. His face hardened. Careful, Rebecca. You don't want to make accusations you can't prove. Like the ones you made against me. He stepped closer, dropping his sympathetic act. Listen carefully. Take the severance package, sign the NDA. Walk away quietly, otherwise, he glanced at the photo of my dad on my desk. Medical bills can be so devastating for families, can't they? The threat was clear. Fight this, and he'd make sure I never worked in tech again. With Dad's treatment costs. Fine, I said, hating the tremor in my voice. I'll sign. Smart girl. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and the board meeting tomorrow? Don't bother coming. We'll inform the team about your unfortunate departure. After he left, I sank into my chair, mind racing. The security breaches had to be faked. I'd have noticed any real ones. But proving that, my phone buzzed. A text from Lisa, my best friend since college and Turner Technologies head of its security. Server room. Now, don't let anyone see you. I grabbed my bag, heart pounding. The floor was mostly empty at this hour, just a few developers pulling late nights. Nobody noticed as I took the back stairs down to the server level. Lisa waited by the biometric scanner, her usual colorful attire replaced by serious black. I've got 5 minutes before the security logs show this door opening, she whispered, ushering me inside. Marcus thinks I'm running routine maintenance. The server room hummed with the sound of cooling fans and processing power. Lisa led me to her workstation, fingers flying over the keyboard. I knew something was wrong when the breach alert started, she said, pulling up logs. The patterns were too perfect, too obvious, like someone wanted them to be found. Can you prove they're fake? Better. She clicked another window. I can prove who created them. But first, did Marcus mention your dad's treatment? I stiffened. How did you know? Because he's been asking it for access to personnel medical records. Said it was for insurance reviews. She turned to face me. Bex, this goes deeper than project sabotage. Look at this. The screen showed a complex web of financial transactions. Project budgets, vendor contracts, offshore accounts. Marcus has been skimming money from project funds for months, Lisa explained. Small amounts well hidden, but when the new CTO started auditing everything, he needed a scapegoat, I finished. Someone to take the fall before the audit reveals the missing money. And who better than the project lead who coincidentally had huge medical bills to pay? Lisa's voice was bitter. He's been setting this up for weeks. The fake security breaches, the leaked documents, all traced back to your access codes. My mind spun with implications. But why me specifically? There are other project leads. Because you were getting too close. Another window appeared. Emails I'd sent questioning certain budget discrepancies. These never reached the CTO. Marcus intercepted them. You were starting to see the pattern. I leaned against the server rack, feeling sick. So he destroys my career to cover his embezzlement. How much did he steal? At least 2 million, maybe more. Lisa handed me a flash drive. Everything's here. The real logs showing when the fake breaches were created. The financial trails, even security footage of Marcus accessing the servers after hours. Security footage? I straightened. You mean? Marcus disabled the main cameras, but not the backup system. I've got him on video planting the evidence against you. Timestamp matches exactly when the breaches were created. Hope flared for the first time since receiving that email. Lisa, this is career ending for him. Oh yeah. Her grin was fierce, but timing is crucial. The board meets tomorrow to approve your termination and officially close the investigation. Once that happens, the evidence gets buried, I realized, and Marcus walks away clean. Exactly. So, she cracked her knuckles. Want to crash a board meeting? I stared at the flash drive in my hand. 5 years of work. My reputation. My father's treatment. All hanging on what I did next. Marcus threatened my dad, I said quietly. If I fight this, he threatened your dad because he's scared. Lisa gripped my shoulders. He knows you're smarter than him. That's why he had to resort to this. But now we have proof. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. Severance papers ready. Sign tomorrow before the board meeting. Don't make this difficult. I looked at Lisa, determination replacing fear. Show me everything. If we're doing this, we need to be perfect. She nodded, turning back to her screens. First, let's talk about those backup cameras Marcus didn't know about. The server room hummed around us as we worked through the night, piecing together evidence of corruption that went far deeper than anyone suspected. Tomorrow would change everything. But first, we had to survive until the board meeting. And Marcus? He was about to learn why he should never underestimate a programmer with nothing left to lose. The Turner Technologies boardroom felt colder than usual that morning. I sat in the waiting area, watching executives file in for the 9 a.m. meeting. Each one avoided my eyes. News of my security breaches had spread fast. My phone buzzed. Lisa, everything ready. Remember the sequence we planned. I touched the flash drive in my pocket, reviewing our strategy. Timing would be crucial. Too early, and Marcus could spin it. Too late, and the board's decision would be final. Ms. Chen. Marcus's voice dripped with false sympathy as he approached. I thought I told you not to come. You did. I stood straightening my blazer. But since you're ending my career with false accusations, I thought I deserved to face the board myself. His smile tightened. The severance paperwork is still unsigned. I met his gaze steadily, like my conscience. Before he could respond, Janet Wu, the new CTO, emerged from the boardroom. Mr. Turner? We're ready. She glanced at me, something like doubt crossing her face. Ms. Chen, I didn't expect. I have information relevant to the investigation, I said quickly. Information the board needs to hear. Marcus stepped between us. The evidence is already conclusive. This is just a formality. Then you won't mind if I present my side. I turned to Janet. Unless there's something Mr. Turner doesn't want the board to see. Janet's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd only been CTO for 2 months, the position Marcus had wanted, but her reputation for fairness was well known. The board should hear all sides, she decided. Come in, Ms. Chen. Marcus's face darkened, but he couldn't object without looking suspicious. I followed them into the boardroom, where 12 executives sat around the massive table. Chairman Douglas Freeman, a man I'd only met twice before, sat at the head. Ms. Chen, he frowned. This meeting was meant to be a formality? I interrupted, my heart pounding. To rubber stamp my termination based on evidence I was never allowed to examine. Murmurs around the table. Marcus took his seat, his face carefully neutral. The evidence is quite clear, he said smoothly. Multiple security breaches traced to your access codes. Project details leaked to competitors. Interesting timing, I cut in. These leaks started right after Ms. Wu became CTO and began auditing project budgets. Janet sat straighter. What are you suggesting? May I? I gestured to the presentation screen. Chairman Freeman nodded slowly. I plugged in the flash drive, feeling Marcus tense beside me. First, let's look at the actual server logs, not the doctored versions Mr. Turner provided. The real logs appeared on screen, showing access timestamps that didn't match the official record. I heard sharp intakes of breath around the table. These logs show the security breaches were created after hours, using an admin override. I clicked to the next screen. An override traced to this terminal. Security footage filled the screen. Crystal clear video of Marcus entering the server room at 11:42 p.m., 3 weeks ago. We watched in silence as he logged into my terminal, fingers flying over the keyboard. Impossible. Marcus stood abruptly. The security cameras were disabled. I smiled grimly. Only the main system. You missed the backup cameras it installed last month. More footage played. Marcus accessing financial records, creating false breach alerts, planting evidence. With each scanning frame, his face grew paler. And here's why. I switched to the financial data Lisa had uncovered. $2 million, siphoned from project budgets over 6 months. Small amounts, well hidden, but leading to the same offshore accounts. The boardroom erupted in shocked voices. Chairman Freeman raised his hand for silence. These are serious accusations, Ms. Chen. Mr. Turner? Marcus had recovered some composure. Fabricated evidence. Ms. Chen clearly created this in retaliation. The timestamps are authenticated. Janet interrupted, examining the logs. And these financial discrepancies, they match irregularities I've been investigating. There's more, I said quietly, pulling out a final document. Mr. Turner has been accessing confidential personnel files, specifically medical records of employees with high healthcare costs. I looked directly at Marcus. He needed someone with a plausible motive for stealing money. Someone like me, with a father fighting cancer. The silence was deafening. Marcus looked around the table, finding no allies in the shocked faces of his colleagues. This is absurd, he tried again. You can't possibly believe. The FBI already does. Lisa's voice came from the doorway. She entered, followed by two men in suits who definitely weren't executives. Special Agent Roberts. One introduced himself, showing his badge. Mr. Turner, we'd like to discuss some irregular financial transactions. What happened next was almost cinematic. Marcus bolted for the second door, only to find two more agents waiting. Within minutes, he was being led out in handcuffs, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Ms. Chen, Chairman Freeman's voice was grave. It seems we owe you an apology. The next few hours were a blur of statements, evidence turnovers, and revelations. The fraud went deeper than even Lisa and I had discovered. Marcus had been stealing from multiple projects, using blackmail and manipulation to cover his tracks. By evening, I was back in my office, watching it restore my access credentials. My termination had been rescinded, with a formal apology and a substantial editor-in-judgment compensation package. So Lisa perched on my desk, grinning. Bad day? I laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. Just another Tuesday in corporate America, Ms. Chen. Janet Wu stood in my doorway. Do you have a moment? Lisa squeezed my shoulder and left us alone. Janet closed the door, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I should have questioned the evidence more thoroughly, she began. As CTO. You were new to the role, I interrupted. Marcus took advantage of that. She nodded slowly. Well, I have a proposition for you. We need a new head of cybersecurity, someone who can prevent something like this from happening again. I blinked. You're offering a promotion, substantial raise, direct report to me, she smiled slightly. Unless you're too busy with Project Nexus? I thought about Dad's medical bills, about the stress of the past months. Can I think about it? Take the weekend. But Ms. Chen, her eyes were serious. We need people like you. People who fight for the truth, no matter the cost. After she left, I sat in my office, watching the city lights come on. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Everything okay? You missed our daily call. I smiled, typing back. Everything's great. Actually, can I come over? I have news. Later that night, sitting in Dad's hospital room, sharing celebratory contraband ice cream, I told him everything. About Marcus's fraud, the evidence, the promotion offer. I'm proud of you, Butterfly, he said, using his old nickname for me. But weren't you scared? I thought about those dark hours in the server room, about facing Marcus and the board. Terrified. But you taught me something, remember? When Mom died? He nodded, understanding in his eyes. The truth always comes out. It's just a matter of who's brave enough to tell it. 3 months later, I stood in my new office, head of cybersecurity, with a view of the city I'd once cried over. Lisa had been promoted too, now leading Project Nexus. We'd implemented new security protocols, ensuring no one could ever repeat Marcus's scheme. The investigation revealed over 20 employees he tried to blackmail using medical records. The company established a healthcare fund in response, ensuring no one would ever have to choose between treatment and integrity. Dad's doctors were optimistic about his latest scan. The promotion meant I could afford a new treatment protocol, one showing promising results. Marcus pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges. Sometimes I saw his wife in the hospital. Their son had leukemia, which explained his desperate grab for money. I still couldn't forgive him, but I could understand the fear that drove him. The backup cameras that caught him. They were my design, implemented months before as part of Project Nexus. He never knew that his own greed for the project he tried to sabotage would be his undoing. My new team hung a sign in our office. The truth always comes out. It's become our unofficial motto, a reminder that in cybersecurity, like in life, integrity matters more than anything. Last week, a junior developer came to me shaking as she reported suspicious access to customer data. I remembered myself at her age, facing down corruption with nothing but truth and determination. "Tell me everything," I said, offering her a seat. "And remember, you did the right thing." Because that's what I've learned. The right thing isn't always the easy thing. But in the end, the truth doesn't just come out, it sets you free. Dad's cancer is in remission now. Sometimes he visits my office, proud to see his butterfly soaring. We keep a pint of ice cream in the break room freezer, just in case. And those city lights I once cried over? They remind me every evening that sometimes our darkest moments lead us exactly where we need to be. We just have to be brave enough to face them with truth as our shield.